Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And our special guest today is Sadhvi, and she's here to share with us her new book, Hollywood to the Himalayas, A Journey of Healing and Transformation. As a Stanford grad, Sadhvi was in the midst of getting her PhD in psychology, and she was very comfortable in her life. When she agreed to travel to India to appease her husband, she never imagined that she would be embarking on a journey of healing and awakening. So let's welcome to the show, Sadhvi.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to being together with you and your whole community today.
Oh my goodness, what an honor it is to have you here all the way from India. I'm so excited we get to spend this time together and to talk about your book. My goodness, what made you decide that now was the right time to write this book and release it?
You know, it's funny because I've been in India for 25 years. And for 25 years, for 24 years, people have been saying, you should write your book, you should write your story. This is, an amazing story, really an incredible story. You should write this. But it wasn't until several things have happened over the last several years. One of them was I started seriously getting pushed by many good friends that I had delayed long enough, and this book absolutely needed to come out now. And if they needed to come and literally sit on me to make me write it, they would. That was one thing that had happened. But in terms of my awareness of where we are as a society and a culture and a people globally, what I've been seeing so much is that there's this really tragic separation between humanity and spirituality, meaning those who are quote unquote deeply spiritual beings, and especially those who are spiritual leaders and spiritual teachers, are seen to be, and in far too many cases, see themselves as unhuman, not supposed to be human. There's this element of, especially in the East, of once you've attained a great spiritual height, that not only do you have access to experiences of oneness, of connection, of awareness, of consciousness that would be the marks of a deep spiritual awareness and awakening and experience, but that you also somehow have transcended that which makes us human, from very basic things like hunger to thirst to fatigue to the emotional, psychological patterns on our psyche of the impressions from, earlier in life and that have stayed with us into whatever kind of issues or neuroses or addictions or emotional patterns we may have or reactions we may have. And I've seen this so much that in the spiritual world, we are kind of expected to not be human. And those who feel mired in their humanity also tend far too often to feel somehow disqualified from spirituality, as though somehow their deep humanity makes them not qualified to be deeply spiritual people as well. And I felt like I'm one of people in the East who's had not only the spiritual experiences and awakening and great blessing to be a teacher, a leader, here in the East, I mean, from the East, but all over the world. But I'm someone who comes from a very, very fully human background. If you look at the biographies and autobiographies of a lot of the religious leaders, the spiritual leaders of the East, the vast majority of them are men who, in most cases, kind of came out of the womb enlightened, or at least from early childhood knew this is my path, who from early childhood weren't interested in games or toys or boys or girls or parties or whatever. They just wanted to meditate. They just wanted to pray to God. And that's just not my story. First of all, I'm obviously not a male. Second of all, I had no inclination in my childhood that this was my path. I came from a very privileged background, a background full of privilege, full of opportunity, full of the very best that money can give, that education can give, that opportunity can give, that privilege can give, really the absolute pinnacle of all of that on so many levels. And yet, as so many of us, I was not really happy. Now, in my case, I also had experienced great trauma in my early childhood. But, and I say this as an important but, when I talk to so many people today, it's not only those who have experienced great trauma who are unable to find deep joy and deep peace and deep meaning and deep bliss in their life, despite, quote unquote, having it all. And so I share the trauma because it's important for people to know that I really do know challenge and suffering and pain, so that nobody could look at me today in my bliss and in my peace and say, well, easy for her because she doesn't know pain or suffering. So it was important for me to share the very open and very vulnerable aspects of that. But I also mention it kind of with an important caveat, which is it does not only apply to people who have been traumatized, because the vast majority of people living in the West are not living in peace, not living in bliss, not living in joy. They may have moments of happiness. They have a great party, a great evening, a great time with loved ones, a nice shopping trip, whatever it may be. But in terms of any kind of sustainable joy, sustainable peace that doesn't require people around me to dance according to my tune, I didn't know anyone who had that. Those who had been traumatized and those who had not been traumatized. There's just something that seems a pervasive epidemic of having it all and yet not being happy, not being in peace. And so I realized it was critical to write this story because it's really the story of a young woman. I was 25 at the time, who had been traumatized in several ways and had tried to deal with that trauma in the way that many of us try to deal with all of our pain, from the severe to the mundane, which is we try to make it go away, whether through drugs or alcohol or food or sex or gambling. And yet none of that works. All it may do is very, very temporarily numb it, but it doesn't actually make the pain go away. And I had gotten to a point at the age of 25 where I was managing my life. I had graduated undergraduate from Stanford, I was doing a PhD in psychology. I was getting straight A's. I was really thriving and succeeding on every external level. And I mean, if you had looked at me, you would have said, this girl's got everything. Or if you were, very politically correct, you would have said, this woman has everything. But in either case, I did not have a felt sense of that internally. I felt like there's something wrong. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with the world. I was definitely not living in sustainable peace and joy. And I went to India with a backpack, as you know, and had this incredible experience of awakening on the banks of a river that I didn't even know was sacred. And I didn't even go to India searching or seeking because I didn't know that there was anything to search or seek for. I really thought that, managing your life was kind of as good as it got, and that was the highest goal that any of us could be held to. And when you felt like life was unmanageable, well, that's where drugs and alcohol and food and sex and all of these things came in. And I went to India because my husband was on a spiritual quest and because I was a very, very strict vegetarian and knew that I could eat happily in India. So I agreed to go on this semester off of my PhD program and had such a powerful transformational experience in which I experienced on every felt level the perfection, the oneness of the universe, and the perfection of myself, my capital S self, as not separate from the divine, not separate from the universe. It was in a moment. I mean, I was just standing on the banks of the sacred river. I had gone down to put my feet in. I was hot. I was tired. We had just arrived in Rishikesh. It was the very first place we had come on our trip. I had opened up a 500-page guidebook in Delhi and had said Rishikesh. And we got there and I went down to the banks of the river. And suddenly, just as though a veil were pulled off of not only my eyes, but off of every way of seeing that I knew, I could see. And I could feel and I could know the absolute perfection and divinity and amazingness and infinity of the universe and of myself. And it obviously transformed my life. And I knew that that was where I was meant to be. I, who had never trusted anyone, anything, including myself, suddenly realized, oh my God, everything is perfect. And I could see and feel this oneness with God, with the universe, with everyone and everything. It was like wherever I looked, everything was pervaded by God. But it wasn't God with a name or a form or a religion or a box. It was just exquisite divinity. And so was I. So anyway, I mean, it's the whole story that the book is made of. But in short, I ended up staying, and that was 25 years ago. And it's been the most extraordinary journey of healing through recognizing the truth of the self, and through forgiving, and through letting go, and through realizing our higher purpose, our truer purpose, than to identify with the one who was abused or abandoned or betrayed or harmed or cheated or lied to, or to identify as the one who is the alcoholic or the addict or the bulimic or the anorexic or whatever our numbing drug of choice may be. And to really understand who we are and to experience that on every level. So I knew that this was the time that it needed to be written, that we needed to bring humanity into spirituality. That yes, you can be a deeply spiritual being and be deeply human. And that's what the book shares, is my story, my deep humanity, the pain, the suffering, also the exquisite transformational experience of awakening. And even after that, the questions and the challenges and the difficulties and what it's like to be celibate and what it's like to be a woman in the man's world of religion, and what it's like to be a disciple, and then what it's like to be a leader, and what it's like to feel the divine flow through you, but with a lot of humor and a lot of humanity and a lot of questioning, and to help people really shift their way of thinking from what I call the Hollywood way of thinking, which says you are your body, you are your role in the world, you are your career, you are your bank account, you are what you look like, you are all of that, including what's happened to you, including what you've done, including your history, including your relationships. That's the Hollywood way of thinking about yourself. And then there's the Himalayan way, which says you have a body. The body is sacred. The body is a temple, but it isn't you. Yes, it has a shape. Yes, it has a size. Yes, it has a color. Yes, it has a race, a religion, a history, but it isn't you. You are the one aware of all of that. You are the one that has stayed the same, even as the body, the roles, the titles, the bank account, the size, the shape, the experiences have all changed. You are that which is constant. And so my particular journey was a very physical journey from Hollywood. I literally grew up in Hollywood. From Hollywood to the Himalayas, via Stanford. But that's my physical arc. And of course, it's an exciting story. It's a fascinating story. It's a funny story. It's a transformational story of awakening and exuberance and expansive infinity. And yet there's the second arc, which is the arc of the way of thinking. That isn't just the physical body that moved from Hollywood to the Himalayas, but then there's the way of thinking. And the vast majority of people who read the book are not moving physically from Hollywood to the Himalayas via Stanford. But every single person who reads the book can shift their way of thinking from this Hollywood way of thinking to the Himalayan way of thinking. And when they do that, then healing and transformation and freedom become theirs. Because we are slaves. We are stuck in our way of thinking, in our patterns, in our identities, in our distractions, in our addictions, in our past. And yet we can all be free. And that's what I share in the book through my story of experiencing it as this, 25-year-old Hollywood raised Jewish academic with a backpack, how I experienced that, so that everyone can understand how they can experience it, because it does not require you to physically go from Hollywood to the Himalayas or from anywhere to the Himalayas. It requires you just to let go of the way that you're thinking so that you can actually embrace a way of thinking that will bring you healing and transformation and freedom.
My goodness, that is so beautiful. Much like your book, it has so much great detail. It has some very funny parts. I love when you talk about having to cross the border in Nepal without a passport, and thought that that was
Yes.
absolutely hysterical how that all came to being. Everyone's kind of smushing in around you, waving their IDs. But there's
One
so
of the
much.
great adventures.
One of the many great adventures you've had. But it's interesting, I think, because you do talk about, being this woman from a completely different culture, completely different background, to the point where, you knew within yourself that you had had this profound spiritual awakening, that you gave up your formal life and everything with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's interesting because to me, it doesn't feel like I gave up anything. And that's an important point that I mention in the book toward the end, because a lot of people, especially in India, where so many people are just dying to go to America, there's this sense of, oh my God, she gave up this life of wealth and opportunity to become this monastic renunciant in service. And what I am so acutely aware of is, for me, it was not a matter of giving up something. It was a matter of making really the same choice that we all make, which is we give up that which doesn't hold the key to our joy and our meaning in life and our fulfillment and our purpose. And we embrace that which does. And so for me, when I experienced this on the banks of Ganga and in India, and learned about spirituality and the incredible teachings and how they could apply to me in my pain and in my suffering and in my addiction and in my stuckness, I realized this is where my happiness lies. And then through service, through being able to be a vehicle, an instrument, as St. Francis of Assisi says so beautifully in his prayer, "O Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace." And that's really what I have been offered, is this opportunity to be an instrument of peace, an instrument of healing, an instrument of service for so many. And the joy that comes with that is so incredible. So, yes, I've given up a lot, but that which I've given up is not that which was ever bringing me the joy and the meaning and the purpose and the exuberance that which I have embraced is actually giving me. And so I feel very much like I've really just made the same choice everybody makes, which is, in which situation am I most likely to actually experience my highest and deepest bliss, my highest and deepest peace, my highest and deepest meaning? And it was very clear to me that this is the place and the life. And yet again, as I've said, that is not in any way, shape, or form a prerequisite or necessity for people in order to experience the healing and transformation of this shift of thought. Yes, for some of us, our dharma or our purpose is to be monastic renunciants and is to live our lives celibate and clothed in orange robes, saffron robes, and in service. But everybody's got a different dharma, a different purpose. And despite despite or regardless of where and what and how your purpose is. You can shift your way of thinking from that which keeps you stuck to that which makes you free. You can shift from the negative patterns of thought. You can shift from craving and aversion, the grabbing and the pushing away, from judgment, from addictions, from all of the stress and the tension and the craziness of your mind, in order to into freedom. And that's the gift that was given to me. And for me, it happened to be given there in India on the banks of Ganga. And that's where I've been so excited to be able to share with people, because I know that not everyone is going to be able to pick up and go to the banks of Ganga. And so to be able to share with them through Hollywood to the Himalayas, the secrets, along with the story, the secrets of how they can implement all of this in their life.
Yeah, I really felt that your book, Hollywood to the Himalayas, is almost like a love letter to the reader on, just in being able to open up themselves to a way of finding a state of awareness that maybe we don't have currently.
Absolutely. And that was another big part of the motivation to get it out is, the way that I think about it is, if I wake up in the morning, let's say, and I take my temperature and it says 102 degrees. And then I go on Google and say, temperature. And Google does a quick survey and comes back and tells me today everybody's temperature is 102. Or I ask everybody I know and they all say, oh, my temperature is 102. And maybe some people even say 103. Then I'm going to think that 102 is normal. Now, in both cases, I have a fever and there is an infection ravaging my body that needs treatment. Whatever type of treatment one may choose to use is certainly up to them. Maybe it's just rest and plenty of fluids. Maybe it's actually some medicine, depending on what our personal inclination may be. But we all understand that 102 means there's an infection and it needs to be treated. But that's because we understand that normal is about 98.6. Whereas if everybody says 102, then I think that's normal. And I don't treat my fever. And this is what has happened to us in our society with misery and stress and addiction and distraction, is we find ourselves stressed and addicted and distracted, or yearning for distraction. And we talk to everybody we know and everybody says, yeah, my God, I'm so stressed. And everybody we know is turning to something for distraction. And everybody we know is numbing themselves in some way. And up and down on waves that go up, down, up, down, up, down of happiness, misery, happiness, misery. I had a chocolate ice cream cone. I'm happy. I didn't get it. I'm upset. People around me were really nice to me. I'm happy. They weren't nice to me. I'm miserable. I got the raise. I got the promotion. I'm happy. I didn't get it. I'm miserable. And everybody we know is riding those waves up and down, up and down. And so we think, oh, that's normal. And so it never occurs to us that actually what we have and how we're living is something that can be and should be treated so that we can actually experience full health and full wellness in body, in mind, in heart, in spirit. And that's what's available for all of us. But we have to first recognize that the way we are living and the way we are thinking, it may be common, but it certainly isn't normal. And that doesn't mean that that's it's bad or that people should feel badly about themselves. It just means that people should recognize that there's a problem in our society, and that which we normalize is definitely not healthy. It's not healthy for us as individuals, and it's not healthy for us as a society or a planet. And we need us all to recognize we can live in completely different ways. We can live free of the craziness of our mind, of the monkey mind, of constant judgment, of constant negativity, of these intrusive thoughts, of the constant commentator, critical commentator in our mind, free of our addictions, free of our histories. We can be free of that stress. We can live in joy, in bliss, in peace, in awareness. But we have to first recognize that a shift needs to take place. And I think it's so critical that these days we all recognize that, because we're miserable. We're all, a society full of people on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medicines, sleeping pills. We're destroying our planet through our own ignorance. And we need to heal, and we can heal. And it's not difficult. And it's not something that requires you to move to India. It just requires you to have the courage to forgive and to let go and to embrace the truth of who you are. And we don't forgive because what the other person did was okay. What happened to me was not okay. What happens to so many is not okay. Abuse and abandonment and cheating and betrayal and lying, these are not okay. But we forgive because we deserve to be free. Many of us have misunderstood forgiveness as though somehow we're condoning what the other person did. We're saying it's okay. And that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness says you did something to me out of your ignorance, your fear, your anger, your confusion. Okay. But I don't need to suffer every single minute of my life just because of your ignorance or ego or anger. I deserve to be free. And when we hold grudges, when we don't forgive, when we identify ourselves constantly based on that which has happened, we are literally sacrificing our freedom, our joy, our peace on the altar of someone else's ignorance and ego and fear and anger. You think that doesn't make any sense at all. I don't want to do that. I don't want to offer my life like that. They hurt me once or 10 times. But I deserve freedom, and I deserve joy, and I deserve peace. And the minute that you accept that and know that, even on some thin little level of you, then you're ready to actually start finding that. And it's available for everyone. And of course, it has nothing to do with what religion we are or what socioeconomic status we are or what race or color we may be or sexual orientation we may be. I mean, it's irrelevant. It's our birthright to live in joy and peace and freedom. But we have forgotten that. And I deeply hope that through Hollywood to the Himalayas, through the book, people will realize, oh my God, if she could do it, if this 25-year-old young suffering woman could do it, so can I.
I think that's so encouraging for so many people because they look at their lives going, gosh, I've, got resentments and things that have happened that I'm having a hard time working through. How would they get to a place of forgiveness? I mean, how did you get to a place of forgiveness?
I got there because an incredible spiritual leader, master, yogi, mystic, asked me whether I wanted to carry that pain to the grave. And I was only 25. And I said, of course I don't. And he said, well, how about to your deathbed? Are you planning to carry it to your deathbed? And I was like, God, no. And he said to me, you're waiting for someone to draw the line. And no one's going to draw it for you. You have to draw that line yourself. And he offered me this incredible opportunity to walk into the sacred river and offer my pain. And of course, I didn't think it would work. I was, getting my PhD in psychology. I thought there's no way things like this work. I had been in and out of hospitals and eating disorder clinics and so many things. And it just seemed like a tunnel with really kind of no end, where just the best that you can do is learn to manage the pain and the neuroses and the suffering and the addiction. And he said to me, you can be free, but no one's going to draw the line for you. No one's going to come in and say, now you can be free. You have to decide. And he said, I want you to stand in that river and offer your pain, offer your anger. And I want you to forgive him. And I have no idea how long I stood in that river. It must have been hours, I think. And I cried and I prayed and I cried and I prayed and I offered as much pain and anger as I could find. And it actually worked. And what I would say to people is the first and most critical step is recognizing, as I was saying before, that you deserve to be free. That someone else's anger, ignorance, ego, confusion, pain is not worthy of your life. They've already hurt you once or 10 times. Don't continue to hurt yourself every minute and every moment of every day just because of what they did to you 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 50 years ago. Whatever has happened to you, you deserve to be free. Grace is there and grace doesn't discriminate. But you have to realize that you deserve freedom. And then we start working on the process of forgiving and letting go. And that's, in the book, I really take people through how it happened for me. And obviously, there's lots of other resources that I've put out in addition to the book, with lots and lots of videos, lots of teachings around actually continuing to take this process of freedom into so many different levels.
Well, I know in your book you also talk about how there's value we can experience in life if we practice letting go. And I'd love for you to touch on that for our listeners.
Sure. So we have to let go. There's a great story of a city in India where the monkeys were overrunning the city. And India is, of course, a country where they try to be as nonviolent as possible. So they weren't going to poison or shoot the monkeys. And somebody devised this brilliant monkey trapping technique where they took coconuts and they hollowed out the coconuts. And they made the hole to the coconut just big enough that an open hand could go in, but that a closed fist could not come out. And then inside the coconut, they put a sweet or a fruit or something that monkeys love. So the monkeys would reach in the coconut, grab hold of the treasure, and then with their closed fist, they couldn't get their hand out of the coconut. Now, you would think that they would be intelligent enough. They are, of course, our closest DNA relatives, that they would be close enough to us in our intelligence to let go, to realize that whatever they had their hand around was keeping them stuck. Because, of course, if you've got 3 legs and one leg is stuck in a coconut, you can't really run or climb trees or swing from branches or do anything. And so clearly one would think they would be intelligent enough to let go, but they never did, ever. And with one of their 4 legs trapped in a coconut, the monkeys became very easy to catch and then transport back into the jungles where they were set free. But I love this story because they are our closest DNA relatives. And this is exactly what we do. We hold on to something that is making us stuck. And it could be a pain, it could be a grudge, it could be an unfulfilled expectation, it could be an identity. But we hold on, thinking that in that thing is our joy, like the monkeys thought in this sweet was their happiness, without realizing that actually holding on to that is what's causing our suffering and is what's stealing our freedom. And so we have to be prepared to let go in order to be able to embrace something that is of infinitely more value. Our freedom, our joy.
That is so beautiful. And it makes perfect sense when you think about it that way, and how we can view the things that kind of get us stuck. It's like, oh, do we choose to hold on to this, or is it something we can let go?
Exactly. And is holding on to it helping me or hurting me? And that's critical, because a lot of times we hold on to things that are hurting us to hold on to, like the monkeys.
And it's making that discernment. What final thoughts do you want to leave our listeners with today?
What I would love to leave everyone with is the awareness that you do not have to suffer. You do not have to suffer regardless of what has happened to you, what anyone has ever done to you, what you've done. Grace, and I mean that not in a religious sense, but in a universal sense, that presence, that pervasive, undivided presence of love, of truth, of divinity, of possibility, which exists in us as well. It's available for all of us. But we have to just be prepared to embrace it. It's like, I think about if the caterpillar spent all day long complaining that, the millipede got 1,000 legs and he only got 100 legs, he might miss that voice or that signal that says, climb the tree, weave yourself into a cocoon. And he might miss the opportunity to become a butterfly. Or if he got the signal, heard that voice, but looked around and thought, who am I? I'm just a caterpillar. I can't ever be anything else. I'm only a caterpillar. Everybody I know is only a caterpillar. And he ignored the call and didn't climb the tree. He wouldn't become a butterfly. And that's how I think about our lives, is that we've got this extraordinary opportunity to become the fullest, the most extraordinary, exquisite, amazing embodiments of our own self, our capital S self. And to experience such deep love and joy and bliss and peace and freedom. But we don't, because we feel so stuck in we don't realize it necessarily, but it's because of our identification with that which has happened to us that then colors our expectation about the future. It colors our whole worldview. And we lose that opportunity to climb the tree and weave a cocoon and become the butterfly. And so we have to be prepared to let go of who we think we are, to embrace who we really are. Again, it's like St. Francis of Assisi says, it is only in dying that we are able to be born to the truth of who we are, not dying physically, but dying to, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have his beautiful prayer in front of me, but he ends it with saying something like, it's only in dying to this unreal self that we are able to actually embrace and be born into our truest, highest, deepest, infinite self. And so I am so excited the way that my book has been really an inspiration and a calling and a roadmap for so many people to find that freedom and to find that deep connection with the truth of who they are, regardless of what religion they may be, regardless of where they may be living, regardless of what their life, dharma, or purpose may be, but to actually be able to let go of the pain, of the anger, of the false identity, and embrace the capital T truth.
That is so beautiful. I mean, I found your book, Hollywood to the Himalayas, to be such an inspiration and the work that you do. Sadhvi, where can our listeners connect with you, learn more about your work, and be part of your community?
Wonderful. Well, the easiest way is probably to go to hollywoodtothehimalayas.com. Very simple, www.hollywoodtothehimalayas.com. That Hollywood to the Himalayas is all one word. Doesn't matter if it's caps or lowercase. Luckily, it doesn't matter anymore. And and they can read about the book. They can have links to all of the different ways to join us, links to so much else. And they can also go directly to my personal website as well, which is just sadviji.org, sadviji.org. But hollywoodtothehimalayas.com will also direct people to all of our different websites, mine and all of the ones of the foundations that we run and the charitable programs that we're doing. Oh, all of the money that's coming into me from this book, by the way, 100% of that goes directly to charity, directly to the women and the girls in our free schools and women's vocational training programs and empowerment programs in the Himalayas. So your one-stop shopping for all things inspiration and transformation. They can get it all at hollywoodtothehimalayas.com, and it'll link them everywhere else they want to go.
Well, Sadhvi, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
And thank you so much, Marianne, and have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you, Sadhvi. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Hollywood to the Himalayas, A Journey of Healing and Transformation. Hollywood to the Himalayas is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers, and if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And remember to support our indie bookstores. If you'd like to connect to Sadhvi, you can on her website, hollywoodtothehimalayas.com, for more information. Her book has been recommended by some of the top people, including Jane Goodall, Deepak Chopra, Jack Canfield, and many other luminaries of our time. And if you have more windshield time than actual time to read, this book's also available on audiobook, so you can take it with you everywhere you go. Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick moment, and we'll be right back after this message. I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.